Hello, everyone. My name is Michaela Wilkes with Liberty Counsel Action. I am here with Jonathan Alexandre, Senior Counsel for Governmental Affairs with Liberty Counsel Action as well. Jonathan, say hello.
Hi, thanks, Michaela. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Well, January is the Sanctity of Human Life Month, and this is where we celebrate and focus on the God-given value of every human life that begins in the womb. And now that Roe versus Wade is overturned, the fight for protection of unborn babies continues and has moved to the battlefield to the states. So we want you to kind of give us a glimpse into the state of the pro-life movement in 2024 and how Christians can stand for life in a post-Roe America. So we'll begin with how pro-abortion activists are attempting to now enshrine abortion in state constitutions through ballot initiatives and have been successful in multiple states nationwide. How can pro-life advocates combat this strategy and inform voters?
Well, in many ways, this is a direct intervention that voters can finally have. For the first time, you can actually go to the ballot and cast your vote in favor or against abortion. You can protect your state from having rewritten in its constitution the so-called right to abortion. So, for the first time, we can actively engage without the sort of Damocles or the overhead of Roe v. Wade saying this is how your state laws always have to be. So it's in many ways a time for optimism, for hope, for engagement. But at the same time, as you mentioned, in almost every state that it has gone to the voters, we've seen voters somewhat overwhelmingly vote in favor of abortion, placing abortion in their state constitutions. That does two things. One, it of course, for the first time, and in many of these state constitutions, ignores life. Life is mentioned in most states' constitutions. Protecting life is mentioned in most state constitutions. So for the first time, it erodes that right and flips it on its head and says that individuals have a perpetual right to abortion. So it does that in the first instance. In the second instance, it makes any other law, so any law that the legislature puts forward to protect a woman, to require there to be hallways big enough to have ambulance gurneys go in during abortion, to require physicians to have rights where they can actually be received in the hospitals that are closest to where an abortion is. All those laws that have been straightforward women health protecting laws, those are eroded as well. So there can be no limitations on abortions whatsoever. So these constitutional amendments are probably the worst that we can think of.
Yeah.
It is, once again, an opportunity for believers to actually cast their vote against this.
Exactly. Yes, the fight has just begun. And I really do believe believers need to stand up right now for this. And so abortion is tragically the leading cause of death in America and worldwide. It's not heart disease, it's not cancer, it is abortion. And so, how are Liberty Counsel and Liberty Counsel Action pursuing legal action and advocacy nationwide on behalf of life?
And from its very inception, Liberty Counsel has been on the forefront fighting abortion. Of course, our brief was cited by the justices as they overturned Roe v. Wade in the Dobbs decision as reason to overturn Roe v. Wade. We write our briefs mainly talking about the genocide that occurs against the Black and brown babies that are disproportionately killed. And so we've been able to take that brief and file in several states. Every state that, as a result of Roe v. Wade being overturned, has had the opportunity to make their laws more defensible for life. We've come alongside of those states and have filed that same brief there. I can think of Kentucky, a case that we were able to intervene in and file our brief. We're able to sit down with the Solicitor General, I think maybe 3 or 4 days before he took to oral arguments defending his state's pro-life laws. And he worked through our brief as if he wrote it himself. And it was part of the argument that he knew that he was going to have to present, and we were able to give him the tools to do that. So that's just one example of the many states where we're actively involved. We've seen victories in Kentucky, Oklahoma, Indiana, and in South Carolina. In Florida, as soon as it will be airing, our boss, Matt Staver, would have already argued in defense ultimately for a mechanism that wants to add abortion to the state constitution. He'll be arguing to keep that out. It's sort of a two-step process, and he'll be presenting oral arguments in order to keep that out. So we're very active on the legal front. On the legislative front, I'm here in Washington, D.C., and in the next week or so, we'll see two strong pro-life bills be put to the floor, and we'll be able to support them all along the way. Our legislatures rely on us for giving good commentary and good talking points, even as it were, and our constituents are expecting us to put up a strong fight here, even in Congress, to secure the rights of the unborn, even here from the Washington, D.C. Capitol.
Awesome. Well, we're so thankful for everything you're doing, especially Matt as well, for being on the front lines here. Next question is, the overturning of Roe versus Wade was obviously this historic victory for Christians who have fought and have prayed for decades for this win. Since then, countless lives have been saved. But what are some significant pro-life wins that have enshrined pro-life protections since the fall of Roe?
Yeah, you saw several states. Oklahoma is one of them that have a near total ban on abortion, where you probably cannot get an abortion in Oklahoma. The same thing for states like Missouri. These were states that have pro-life majorities, that have a biblical perspective on life, that had laws in place that as soon as Roe v. Wade was overturned, they were able to activate. But the point that you made, I think, is so important, that there are so many lives saved. 5 years from today, you'll have hundreds of thousands of more kindergartners, being able to walk into schools. And, in the year 2043, I think it is, you'll have a crop of high school graduates that are going out into the world that were saved literally because Roe v. Wade was overturned, because of the pro-life advocacy of many of us, many of our organizations. So quite literally, you have more lives being saved in the days following Roe v. Wade, and we'll see a new generation born because this specter of Roe v. Wade is gone. So we ought to be encouraged there. I do believe that every beating heart is the loudest testimony against anything the pro-aborts want to do. And so we'll continue to fight so that all of those heartbeats can continue to live.
That's amazing. I love what you said. Every beating heart is a testimony. And I know you are also a father as well. And so this hits close to home, is that every baby truly is a gift from God. Okay. So just to end this interview, kind of give us a little bit more on how education on the gruesome reality of abortion can play a key tool in changing the hearts and the minds and the policies on abortion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned the number one cause of death is abortion. The number one type of abortion now is chemical abortions. And what that is literally pills that are mailed to a mother. Mother could be 14 years old or 40 years old, and a pill is mailed to her house. She's told to take that pill. And what that pill does is stop progesterone. If she's pregnant with a child, it stops the hormone progesterone, which is the one thing that the mother's body produces to sustain the baby. It's the one thing. You mentioned that I'm a father. It's the one thing that my wife was able to get supplements of in order to ensure that she was able to carry our baby to term. That's the one hormone that the abortionists are mailing a pill into a mother's home to stop that production. And what it literally does is starves the baby inside of the womb. The baby shrivels up inside of the womb, and then the mother is required to take a second pill that it forces contractions and expels the baby. The sign on those second pills say, don't look into the toilet, don't turn back around. It'll look like a heavy period is what they call it. But in reality, you're losing 10-week-old, you're losing 14-week-old babies that otherwise would be born into this world had not the predatory abortion industry gone in and convinced a mother that it was better to end that life. And there's no way around talking about the truth of what these chemical abortions are actually doing, the harm that it does against women, where they're not prepared. There's no one in the room with them. They're getting these medications via a telehealth, just like this. They don't have to see the doctor. Doctor's not performing any examination on them, just mailing these pills out. And it's killing millions of our babies every day. And so we ought to stand against that. There's a case going up to the Supreme Court that'll challenge on the merits whether or not the FDA should have approved this pill. Of course, we think that it should have never allowed for this poison pill to be in America. So this is where our fight is going to be. And the education is just that, telling folks, not being afraid to walk through exactly what the abortion procedure does. In the 1990s and the early 2000s, we had sort of a hill to climb to explain to folks, there are tools and scalpels that go inside of the woman and forceps that rip apart a baby. That it was gruesome to put on display, but it was necessary to show that by supporting abortion, by supporting the so-called reproductive right, that's what you're pushing forward, and that it is the left, it is the other side that is pushing abortion that are extreme on this. So that's how we'll continue to educate, but at the same time, always providing a way out. One of the things that God has always been good in His world is giving us another choice, another direction out. And so, as we arm our pregnancy care resource centers, these centers that are all across the country that are helping women with alternatives, saying to the over 67% of women that say if their circumstances were different, they would have brought a baby into this world. These pregnancy resource centers are saying to those 67% of women, we'll help come alongside you. We'll give you the training that you need, the maternal health that you need afterwards, the diapers and Pampers that even financially you may seem stuck in order not to get that. And so part of the education, but also being the hands and feet in Christ of Christ is how we will ultimately overcome this abortion evil and provide true life-saving alternatives for women.